I don't know whether you know this, but Jesus said he's coming back. Not big news. Old news, but we're anticipating it nevertheless. And so everybody's all caught up in when's Jesus coming back. And we've talked about it a lot, looking at the signs that, wow, for the last almost 3 years, it's astounding how the signs are coming into focus for us. But I want to take a little bit different tack tonight. I want to talk about why he's coming back. We're going to look at Psalm 2 and begin to see that. We're not going to look at why he's coming back for the rescue of the church, the bride of Christ. That's the rapture. The second coming of Christ is 7 years later, at least. We're going to look at why he's coming back then. And so the tribulation period gives you a pretty good perspective on it. Tribulation period is going to deal with the Jews. They're going to come around. He's going to deal with sin in the world. He's going to deal with Satan and his minions. And so there's all that. And we've talked about that a lot in looking at Revelation and some different things. But I want to look at from a little bit different perspective and see why he's coming back in Psalm 2. So Psalm 2 carries with it several different voices. As we go through this, there's going to be several different voices that are going to be speaking, and we're going to look in on that conversation. So let's just look at Psalm 2. And I've told you before, if you haven't mastered Psalm 2, in the days that we're living, you need to master Psalm 2 because it gives so much understanding. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves. Now they're supposed to be set by God. But here we find the kings of the earth are setting themselves up. And the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. So we'll stop there and we'll begin to look at some of these voices that are being spoken. David speaks. He just can't believe the kings of the earth would do the things that they do in verse 1 and 2. In verse 1, we find that they declare their resistance. The kings of the earth declare their resistance. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? So the heathen and kings, we get that. But until I preached through in Acts where we were just recently, I didn't understand, I'd never picked up on it, that the people, that's the Jews. That's the Jews. The Jewish people imagine a vain thing. I was listening to a Jewish rabbi talking to Morgan Freeman and telling him, well, you know, the Jews, we have our Messiah. We're anticipating our Messiah. But it's not like those Christians' Messiah. Our Messiah is not going to be God. And I went on to some other things. That was probably all I needed to hear. But the heathen rage, and even the people of God imagine a vain thing. What would you think the vain thing would be? And it's all speculation at this point, but we could speculate pretty well. Seems to me it would be, they imagine they don't need God. I think America's right there too. As long as I can remember, I have had the sense that America's biggest problem is its wealth, its abundance. We don't need God for anything. We have the stock market, we have gold, we have money, we have everything we need. What do we need God for? As long as I've been alive, that has been fomenting in America. Now, it's in the back of people's minds, but it's been growing over the years. We've come to the place where we are in America The reason why the gods are coming back that Jonathan Cahn talks about is because America pushed the God away. Basically relegated him to not important. He's just not important. And then in verse 2, not only did they declare their resistance, but they distanced themselves from reason. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, is that a battle that we can win? Not you and I, but America. Is that a battle that America could win? No, it's a vain thing. It's foolishness. But I think it may be tied up in some of the science and the reason and education and these gods that we have made. We trust in those things, and frankly, God's just not even really around. Where's the evidence of God? Kind of like Israel, when Moses went up to the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments, they said, he's been gone a long time. Maybe Moses wasn't the God we thought. Maybe Yahweh's not the guy that we thought he was. Those gods back in Egypt, we knew they were real. Let's get back to that. So this passage, and we talked about this when we preached through Acts chapter 4, was fulfilled in Acts chapter 4. In verse 24, when they heard that, they lifted up their voice to God with one accord and said, Lord, thou art God, which hast made heaven and earth and sea and all that in them is, who by the mouth of thy servant David hast said, why did the heathen rage and the people imagine vain things? So the early disciples, they could see this is that. Psalm 2. The kings of the earth stood up, and the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his Christ. For of a truth against thy holy child Jesus, whom thou hast anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, were gathered together. So the nation's voice, insanity. We had the voice of David of incredulity. He couldn't believe that the nations would be that way. And now we have the voice of the nations crying insanity. Speaking, would that not describe what just happened yesterday? I heard a statistic on the way home. I assume it was right. The guy didn't tend to be a liar. He said that in New York City, in the black districts, 9 of 10 blacks voted against, who's the guy running for governor? Selden, yeah. They voted against Zeldin, who was running on, an anti-violence platform. And 9 out of 10 blacks in New York voted against him. They're being killed too. So the point this person was making was people are voting contrary to their own self-interests. They're voting against themselves. What would you call that?
Brainwashed.
Huh?
Brainwashed.
Brainwashed. Insanity. Another word. It doesn't make any sense to a rational person. But they did it. And not just that. That's just one statistic I heard. We're going to find that's all over America. Now, maybe not flyover country, although 4 out of 5 states where abortion was on the ballot, abortion won. So the insanity of taking food and making it fuel, corn into fuel, soon you're going to be hungry if you keep that up. Killing your babies, ultimately you're going to kind of run out of people, aren't you? Right, and then that's where we've talked about that. We have actually gone backwards. You've got to have a certain number of babies per family in order to sustain, much less go forward in population growth. We're going backwards. So, the nation's voice of insanity. Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. There's one thing a 2-year-old and evidently Americans have in common. They don't like to be told no. They don't like to be told what to do. Now, if you think about the insanity of the groups that are hurting people that are helping girls get in trouble so they don't have babies, right? Why would you hurt somebody helping somebody? They can't stand it that somebody's doing something good for girls. Why, they should just abort those babies. You shouldn't be helping them have those babies. Insanity doesn't really even cover it. Those are the times we're living, though. Just some examples. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. We could talk about it a lot more. The way God did us, we don't like to be told those are our restraints. We want to be free to do more. They're figuring out how to tap into our brain. We've talked about that. And they'll be able to control, they'll be able to dial up or down our depressive mood, or who knows, you can let your mind imagine where that would go. They will present it, Elon Musk will present that as really helping us. But if they could help us with our mood, they could also help us know how to vote, and on and on and on and on. Climate change, we talked about that last Sunday night. It has become a religion. The United Nations is now forming up with religious groups. They're going up to Mount Sinai, and they're going to have the new 10 Commandments of climate change, and they're going to fuse together religion and this new religion of climate change. Yeah, they're going to make it a religion. They're finding that they don't have enough power to get it done, and they need to get the faith community involved. November 13th. But, so climate change is a perfect example. Just when we thought we had taken that, okay, there's that. We'll just kind of ignore that. But now it's becoming a religion, and if you're not on board with this new religion, well, we'll have to do something with you. Something will have to happen to you. Your church is going to have to pay an extra tax, and they're going to come for that. I'm surprised they haven't come already. I mean, after all, they make the argument we enjoy the roads out there, and the military protects us, and the police. So why shouldn't churches pay taxes? How would you respond to that? The problem is you paid, and you paid, and you paid, and everybody already did pay. We're not getting anything special as a church. Okay, that be the case. The nations are making a voice of insanity. Imagine, though, you're living in ancient Israel as your society around you digresses toward what became the civil war between Israel and Judah, and they separated into the two nations. And ultimately, they were carried into Babylonian captivity because they would not come back to God. Israel to the north first, and then Judah to the south. And Judah to the south was the legitimate king lineage. And they saw what happened to Israel to the north, and still they didn't turn back to God. Imagine if you'd been an Israelite living in that day who wanted God to prosper and the things of God to prosper and Judaism to prosper. And yet your society is doing this. Isn't that kind of how it feels right now? And then imagine living in the early church days, the book of Acts that we're going through. Everything, everywhere was pagan all the time. And we throw that word pagan around, but the gods are returning. Acts is the story of them being kicked out. And the church did it. Well, God did it. Church doesn't have any power to do anything. But now those gods are returning, a.k.a. The book that Jonathan Cahn wrote. I mean, he's nailed it. He's right on target. Yeah. It's scary how accurate Jesus was with his predictions. It's going to be worse. So imagine you're in that society in the early church era. I throw that out there because we think, oh, this is so bad. Stop whining. Buckle up, Brother Bub. Get ready. Things are getting worse. We need to become more aggressive. People don't like that term. That's what the early church was. They were aggressive with getting the gospel out there. That's what we're going to need to do. Jonathan Cahn relates in his book, The Return of the Gods, about the goddess Ishtar and the rainbow. I want to talk about that a little bit. Very interesting. Ishtar was celebrated with cross-dressing parades in the month of June. I did not know that. The month of June. Why? Well, there's a reason why. So Gay Pride Month is June. That's why I bring this up. That's why he put it in his book. I've always wondered, what it is about June. Well, it's not just a thing. It's not just accidental. It's this very thing here. Gay Pride Month has a god behind it, Ishtar. Coincides with the summer solstice, the time of the pagan celebration when the goddess Ishtar had parades. And she was celebrated all over with parades. Is that not eerie? Things happen for reasons. It's not just that they like to have parades. This goes all the way back to when those gods were cast out. Ishtar was a real thing. Now she's back. Not with her name plastered. It's now called Gay Pride. Supreme Court decisions about gay marriage. 2003 and 2013. I pasted this in from the National Constitution Center. You can go there to the National Constitution Center and you can grab this information too. I want you to just see, I'm not making this stuff up. It was on June 26, 3, that the divided court said in Lawrence v. Texas that a Texas law making it a crime for two persons of the same sex to engage in intimate sexual conduct was unconstitutional. What was that date? June 26th. June 26, 2013, a divided court in United States versus Windsor said that the Defense of Marriage Act was unconstitutional as a deprivation of the equal liberty of persons that is protected by the Fifth Amendment. What's the date? June 26th. In 2015, on June 26th, in honor of Supreme Court ruling gay marriage bans are unconstitutional, the White House turned into the Rainbow House. So we have some pictures from the past that become prophetic in the way that they played out. They were a real historic thing, but they're also models. And so the Tower of Babel is a huge prophetic model. For a lot of reasons, I don't have the time to go into it. But it was, whatever else it was rebellion against God and rebellion against heaven. It was done. They tried to build the Tower of Babel, whatever it was and whatever they were trying to do with it. It was in direct contrast to what God said. He said, go, and they were coming together. That you can defy God and there won't be any consequences. So the voice of authority, verses 4 through 6. God sees their folly. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. this doesn't fit with the sugar-coated candy cane, cotton candy mentality Americans have of God. He's mocking them. That's just the beginning of it. Next, he speaks from his fury. So first he laughs. He laughs at the stupidity, but then he speaks from his fury. Verse 5, then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Now the church is not going to incur the wrath of God, but America is. And then third, he secures the future of his son. Can we stop the way prophecy is going to play out? That would be like spitting into the wind. That wouldn't make any sense. Verse 6, yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. Now this was a real thing. David was being made king. But this, I believe, is a prophetic model going forth. Somebody said that the story of the Bible is the story of God giving his son a kingdom. I think that's pretty accurate. He's going to have a kingdom. We call it the millennial kingdom. He's going to reign from Jerusalem, and he's going to have a kingdom, just as God predicted he would. So, you may be a little bit panicked right now. So I want to calm your nerves just a bit. Panic in a moment of disaster can be deadly. You realize that? I mean, that's a maxim to live by. When a disaster begins to unfold around you, panic's not going to help you. You need to keep your head. Panic can cause two extremes that are both a problem. First, people will freeze, not knowing what to do. And that can, of course, lead to a problem. When you hear a gunshot go off, freezing is not the reaction that you need to have. What do you need to do?
Get down.
What?
Get down.
No, draw your gun. Yes, get down. Get down, then draw your gun. So, not acting, and that's, my dad used to tell me, he was raised up near Hamilton, Missouri. He used to tell when he was raised as a kid, he'd hear in the darkness, in the wilderness out there, they'd hear a woman scream. Well, it wasn't a woman screaming, it was a lynx or a cat like that just before they pounced, they would scream. And it sounded like a woman from a distance, and it would cause their prey to freeze, and they could nail them. So failure to act is you need to have in your mind, your thinking that when the gunshot goes off, you duck. Now, even if it turns out just to be a backfire, no harm, no foul. But if it turns out to be a gun, you might make yourself a smaller target. I'm not calming your fears very fast, am I? The other problem is the other extreme, and that's overreacting. That is, you just freak out and you begin to, let's do something. Right? You need to do something that will get you out of danger, not just do something. Here's how this plays out. As a church, in the back of my mind, and we've had deacon meeting discussions about it, mentioned it in the leadership team a time or two, and we've begun to think in the last few years that we may actually have to begin to go underground. Meaning, we won't meet like this. We'll meet in 2 or 3 homes, and it'll be on the sly. You don't think we'll have to get to that, do you? How many of you think that we might get to that? Yeah, good. I don't know when. How many of you think it's time to get off Facebook? just on general principle, yeah, but I mean because of what we're talking about tonight. See, I have a problem with Facebook. I can't shut up. And I say what I'm thinking. And I say what everybody needs to be thinking. That's why I say it. But that puts me on, I'm probably on several 3-letter government agencies' lists.
So it's too late for you anyway.
Oh, yeah, it's too late. I might as well stay and go down with the ship. Is that what you're saying? In the end, I think the only way to respond is to prepare ahead of time.
To be a prepper.
So, yeah, to be a prepper, exactly. So, in your mind, you need to begin to think defensively. Why is a person asking me the question? Maybe keeping my mouth shut is the best thing for me to do. When somebody asks me a question, I don't have to tell them what I know. So I'm trying to equate this to the underground church and, Russia back in the 1970s and 80s. We need to be smart now about what we say and do. That's the preparation. That's the only preparation I think we can do. I mean, we're not talking about a gunfight, right? And you bring up the church, things could happen to our church. How will we respond to that? Somebody throws paint all over the church or sets it to fire. I think these are the days we're coming to. How are we going to respond to that? Well, you don't fight fire with fire. I mean, there are certain situations where, you burn this out so when the fire gets to it. But beyond that, you fight fire how? With an opposite. That's why Jesus said, when people curse you, bless them. And pray for them. So taking revenge and demanding our rights, may not be the best way for us to go. We need to think about these things ahead of time because we're coming to those days. So we've just got time. We'll look at Luke 21. Jesus' words take on a bit of a new nuance. Luke 21:25. This is a prophetic passage. Jesus is giving information to the disciples to get ready for what ultimately is the tribulation period. And there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations. Watch this. Are we seeing distress of nations? America used to be the supreme power. Russia had receded. China had not come up. That's no longer true. We have 3 world powers now. Thank you, Mr. Biden. Distress of nations. Germany just sent somebody to talk to Xi and said, going backwards from globalism is not a good idea. And all the people back in Germany said, we sent you there for a different thing. We didn't send you there to tell him that we're your friend. Now, my point is, there's just turmoil. Nations don't know what to do. Is globalism over? Are we going to recede from China or is not? Distress of nations with perplexity. The sea and the waves roaring. In prophecy, the sea and the waves are pictures of peoples, masses of peoples. Have we seen any riots going on in the world? Anybody resisting what's going on with fertilizer and farmers? You know what I'm talking about. You see the news like I do. The sea and the waves roaring. Men's hearts failing them for fear. Not believers. I'm not afraid of anything. Well, okay, I'm not just trying to beat my chest and make you think I'm really super spiritual. I've got someplace to go with the things that would make me afraid. On my knees, in my Bible, was telling somebody recently who's going through a difficult time with their job that what I have always done in the ministry, when I've had the devil get after me, and sometimes it comes in the form of a deacon. I've had devils in deacons come after me. And the advice that was given to me was double down on the things you need to be rightly doing. That's pretty good advice for us. We just need to double down. In some cases, that might mean start doing the things that we're supposed to do as believers. His heart shall fail them for fear and for looking after these things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Well, our time is gone, so we'll finish talking about Psalm 2 next week. We've talked about the insanity. We're going to talk about more of what God is going to do as a result of that in the next week.